I've got a disorder called hyperhidrosis, which is essentially where you excessively sweat when you're under pressure. I've endured this since I was probably like mid-high school. For me, that was always a big struggle, starting out and doing the selling, because I knew that every time I was under pressure to talk about my product, I wasn't confident about it because I was new in business. I would feel the need to sweat.
Welcome to another episode of the All Business Baby podcast. Today I'm speaking with Tuan Duong from Duo Tax.
If your goal is to build a bigger business, you've got to understand the idea of letting go. The sooner you can let go of as much as you can, the more time you then spend on building a great business. And if you're into building great businesses, trust me, whatever you think you're good at, there's always someone who's going to do it better than you. As a business owner, having that control over the sales process is critical to the survival of any business.
All right, Tuan, welcome to the All Business Baby podcast. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having us, Phil.
So to start, for the audience that doesn't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your business?
Sure. I'm one of Phil's many partners in business when it comes to partnerships and outsource of work, and I specialize in doing tax depreciation, which is one of the services accountants would connect with, as it is its own sort of specialized industry. And as a tax depreciation expert, also a quantity surveyor, my job is to assist property investors across Australia to work out what the building costs are and work out what the depreciable value is on that over a period of time. And that type of advice is where accountants obviously find value because their clients want to save tax.
Of course,
and
yes.
It's one way to minimize their tax. So that's where I come into the picture.
Which, look, I'll tell you what, Tuan, you've saved quite a lot of money for my clients and my business partner clients as well. So thank you for your services and all you do.
Appreciate it. Thanks for choosing us to be your preferred partner.
Awesome. Before we get into all the business talk, I'd like you to share a little bit about yourself and your beginnings and what it was like growing up in Sydney, what you went through, and anything that you want to share.
Yeah. For me, starting out in business is always daunting, like every other person on this planet. When I first started my career, it wasn't blossoming. To be honest, it was. I chopped and changed my career, which was where I started. When I started in university, it was doing maths and finance, and then sort of jigging uni and jigging classes. Jigging classes. Really, then I realized there was no passion in it. So when I moved on from that, I started doing construction management because it was, it was something that I thought was interesting because I saw someone else do it. I actually saw someone with practical experience actually help my mum out, project manage her restaurant fit out. And so I thought, well, what do you do? And I thought, this is great. You hang around, you're building things. And I thought it was something I would be interested in. So I took on the path of being a construction management student. That was a great experience because I really enjoyed it. I actually found something I actually enjoyed studying that felt practical. It felt like, at the end of it, I could actually get a career and enjoy doing the work. And I did. And so I went on to become a civil engineer. Sort of an on-site engineer, and I was working with, obviously building bridges, roads and that type of thing. And it was very practical and a great period of my life where I learned a lot as well. And as you can probably imagine, like working as an engineer, you'd probably spend a lot of time doing spreadsheets and building out and troubleshooting and problem solving and whatnot. And so that's a great skill set I thought I had. And when I went into working, I think going to my first employment, as a grad, I think I was very I've always been reserved as a person, I believe. Anyway,
couldn't tell. Couldn't tell.
I'm definitely an introvert by any measure, mostly, and so naturally for me is not speaking up. And going to my career, not speaking up meant that I was never promoted, heard. Didn't really have a voice for myself because that's just the way I am. It's the way my parents are as well, very quiet, reserved people. And so seeing other people around me go through the motions of being promoted, voicing themselves, being heard, and eventually going to those higher roles in the same company was really daunting for me. It was very devastating at the same time. But I just did, I try to do great work and let that be my voice. But sometimes that just doesn't always work in every workplace because not every workplace recognizes people that do great work, but you've also got to be,
Yeah, that's right.
whatever you want to call it, a bit of a show pony or whatever it is and glorify your work.
Try to have that relationship with the bosses, right?
Yeah, and I wasn't very good at that. And that's something I would have loved to do at the time. But needless to say, I then felt like to break through with some of the problems I had, like, for example, financial problems, credit card problems, as you do with any young person. I went on lots of bucks parties and actually, I remember going back from a bucks party in Europe, and I think it was a $15,000 credit card that was maxed out, and I thought, you know what? If there was any time in my life that I really needed to make a career change, it's probably now. Where I could actually change, not just because I wanted something more in life, but I had to be financially free, not just to pay off a credit card, but for all the things I wanted in life.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, of course. I like anyone else, would like to have a nice house, have a nice car, and live comfortably. So that definitely was going to happen, especially with the lifestyle I have.
Yeah.
And so I thought, let's see, what is out there. So I come across a situation myself where I was a property investor, like many millions of property investors in Australia. Nothing a lot different to them is that I experience owning an investment property. And the part of that process is, of course, organizing a tax depreciation schedule, Phil, as you know. And that experience in itself allowed me to go, you know what, that's something I understand because I've got a bit of background in it, but matching my knowledge with something that I thought I could be passionate about. And for me, it was just simply that. It was, why not be
match made in heaven, really?
Yeah. But why not be a quantity surveyor, something I've got experience in, and match it with, doing depreciation schedules for property investors to help people like myself save money.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not a very good salesperson, as I know, as any engineer is. They're not salespeople. But what the product does offer is simplicity. Like, hey, I can offer you this tax deduction, and how easy is that to sell?
I mean, you really found a niche, right? Because I remember 10, 15 years ago, before you were around, Tax, there wasn't many players in that field. And now I think over the last 10 years or so, you've really dominated that property industry, which is a credit to your hard work. But it was just, I think you found sort of, I'd say, a gap in the market, or a market share that was there for you to have, and you took it with both hands. Sure. So amazing. Which I'm also surprised because I know some of your cousins and they're all mortgage brokers, and I thought, why isn't Tuan a mortgage broker?
Yeah.
But well done on you for that. So in the first year of business, when you made that switch and you saw the opportunity, what was the first year like for you as a business owner?
I am not a person that I would describe myself as overly keen or ambitious to that level. Then I never thought I was because I was the guy that was happily waiting for the next promotion.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't call myself ambitious in that regard, but I think I'm more opportunistic. And so that first year for me was an eye-opener, because my goal when in my first year, or even before I started my business, was when I knew I had this opportunity, I thought, you know what? I always wanted an income of $100,000. That's everyone's magic number, isn't it?
Six figures.
6 figures, yeah. Like if you have an income of $100,000 pre-tax, you're good. You're good. You're good.
Not now in today's age.
It's a great thing to sign off. And you know what? Funnily enough, like a lot of staff that I've seen come through the doors still have that. You know, especially when you're starting out in an entry-level role, you could be getting paid 60 to 70K. So for 100K is a good benchmark for a lot of people still, I think, especially juniors. And so for me, I was that. And $100,000, if you work it backwards and you charge about $500 or $600 a report, you need about 4 of those, right? A week. And I thought 4 of those a week, which is less than 1 a day, right? To do in a work week. And that could give you $2,000 a week, right? And you would be somewhere around 100K a year. And I thought, that's my magic number. I've got to do 4 reports a week. And so the first year I set out, I wanted to do just 4 reports a week. And I didn't know how, but I knew people that were in business. And it's all about, of course, you've got a friend or someone that started out in business, whether it's today or with you or 5 years ago. That was a good place to start. And for me, it was John Bowie, who started his law firm. And he then introduced me to the idea of BNI and networking and
yeah.
all that. And I went to that. And when I did, it was an eye-opener. I thought, well, this is great. This is a place where I could just say anything I want and people might believe me. And
Fake it till you make it.
They literally did, and they literally gave me a chance to sell what I had to sell. And fortunately enough, they actually believed me and gave me one, gave me two, and probably by the end of 4 or 5 months, I was then consistently hitting about 4 reports a week.
Yeah, wow.
So that was my first year. And I guess with that came the bit of the need to then, I guess, identify how to manage workload, because I think for me, when I got to 4 a week in 4 months, I thought, you know what, if this is what it could do for me in such a short span of time, why stop now? And I think that opportunity really opened the doors for me to say, you know what, why not push myself to see how far I could go? But not in the way of setting financial goals, but more so, let's see how many more people we could actually help out there, how much outreach we could have with this one service or one product offering that we had.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, the tip there the tip there is basically the first year you just reached out to your support network or your friends and family, and from there you learnt the power of networking. Amazing.
And leveraging on the people around you is very effective, because the truth is, like, you could read as many books as you need. You could, and you can be daunted by all the YouTube podcasts and all that you
taking all the information.
But if you just have one person or a couple of people around you that you can connect with to just show you the initial steps of finding sales, and I think for me that's been a real privilege, is that I haven't ever shied away from selling. And I mean, selling is pretty much having a conversation. Selling is not what people think it is out there, but I think having a sales pipeline in any business will mean that the business has the opportunity to survive. And I think having that in any person that's a business owner is critical, because then that means that you are guaranteeing your future by way of, hey, when things turn bad, I can always rely on myself to go find more work.
That's amazing. I wanted to go back to a point you mentioned. You said you're an introvert, right? So I'm sure people listening out there are some introverts out there as well. So in your type of business, you said there's a lot of selling involved. Was it hard for you to go, holy crap, I've actually got to speak in front of a lot of people, I've got to sell myself, being an introvert?
Actually, just going on the podcast today, like any podcast I go on, I've got a disorder called hyperhidrosis, right? Which is essentially where you excessively sweat when you're under pressure or you're stressed out or anxious. So I've endured this since I was probably like mid high school, and so I've found a way to manage it through medication. But fortunately, I think for me, it's always been one of those things that has always been plagued me as a person, because I remember going through that, being able to present and confidently do so was something I was really good at in school. And then once I had this issue that I identified and I was diagnosed with, I was like, it's really like crippled my ability, and it's really capped me in terms of my ability to go out there and be myself. So for me, that was always a big struggle, starting out and doing the selling, because I knew that every time I was under pressure to talk about my product, because I wasn't confident about it, because I was new in business, I would feel the need to sweat. And so that was a huge impact on my life. And it was hard, but it was one of those Achilles heels, but I overcame it, and really how I did without having to resort to medication for the rest of my life is being confident about what I do and doing it on repeat. And so I think networking, especially in particular, when I was doing BNIs, I did that for a 4-year period in the first 4 years of my business. And that allowed me to then get really confident about what I was doing, about getting uncomfortable every week to the point that it became comfortable. And talking in front of people is something I don't shy away from anymore, because it is something that it's inherent in me, and I think how important it is in order to be successful at any sales role, in particular for a business owner. And I think it's important as a business owner, not that it's wrong or there's right or wrong, but as a business owner, having that control over the sales process is critical to the survival of any business.
No, I think that's a really good point. I'm a part of BNI too, and I initially saw it, I didn't like it, but then I went to see it a couple of years later, and I thought, you know what, I don't need the referrals, I don't need the business, but what I saw, that I could get out of it was the personal development. And, you know, being Asian and public speaking, it's not second nature to us, right?
Yeah.
You stand up, you get red-faced, you start stuttering, you know, you lose track and you blank out. And I thought, man, I'd love to public speak, confidently present, and that, you know, doing BNI or anything similar to that of that nature has definitely given me the ability to confidently speak, you know, jump on camera now and not feel nervous or do all those things. I'd say it's a superpower.
Yep.
Almost. And
Love
to your
it.
point, being more confident in sales and knowing what you're doing and speaking to a bunch of people, because now that allows you to sell to many people and not just to one. Because I'm great at speaking one-on-one with clients.
Yeah, that's it.
But being able to speak to many
Groups.
you're just more efficient about it, right? Minimum input, maximum output.
It's got to a point where BNI for me is not just yes, for me, it was a tool to help me start my entrepreneurial journey of selling and starting a business. But I think importantly is I also recognize the same, and I love that the fact that you pointed that out is that it was a learning curve for you to get comfortable in presenting, overcoming that challenge for you. And for me now, BNI isn't or networking isn't our number one sales campaign or driver for pipeline, right? And the reason why we put half a dozen, almost 8, 9
There's a dual tax guy everywhere.
Yeah. And the reason why we do that is because I had these lessons. When I look back and the lessons that I got from networking week to week is that it teaches you a lot about accountability. And because you can go and sell to someone, I can pick up the phone today and sell to an accountant or sell to a mortgage broker and say, hey, this is what I do and I do it really well and I'd love the opportunity to work with you. But you can say that to someone one time and they can believe you, right? But if you go to a networking event with the same people every week for 52 weeks and you do it for 5 years straight, trust me, when you say to someone, you're held accountable for what you say. So if you sell and you convince that person on week 1, but then you don't see it through to week 4 or 5, and they think you promised me it in 1 week, but here you are week to week looking at me straight in the eye and telling me you're the greatest at what you do, but you failed to deliver. So I love that about the week to week networking. As much as people think it's a cult, networking builds accountability in people like me. And I would have to say that when I started, I didn't have that type of accountability within, but because of going to these networking groups, it taught me, hey, just when you say it, you're going to have to face that person next week and you're going to have to be held accountable. Yeah. And I was extremely confident. I felt the first month of BNI, I was really confident because I put on a facade. I went out there and I sold. But by week 5 or 6, the feelings are, because you can't do that week in, week out without showing your true colors. And when you're there every week for 52 weeks, your true colors will show. And then what I found was at the end of it, I was a very introverted person again. And what I was like in the beginning, I was completely not that. And people knew that. And I just went right back into where I was. But importantly, I still had my integrity. I still had my accountability piece. And people knew exactly what I did. And I did it really well. And that was most important.
That's amazing. You learned a new skill. You showed your credibility with your brand as well for that time. But I think ultimately what's important about what you said is relationships, right? Yeah, you can pick up the phone and do a cold call. But ultimately, like we all know hundreds of accountants, marketers, whatever it is, but we give work to the person we know and like and trust. And that's what, networking teaches you as well. So thank you for sharing that. I believe, any business owners out there that haven't done any networking or just starting out, get into networking. It's as I say sometimes, your network is your net worth. And the bigger your network is, the bigger your net worth is. So definitely great tip. Now, your business has grown substantially over the past since you started. What does it look like now? And as a business owner, what are the challenges you're facing now? And what are some tips that you can share to the audience about tackling that?
Yeah, going to my 10th year in business now, approaching a decade. And it's a decade ago when we first met as well. Then
I know. Because I remember that little shop in Canleyville actually with the dual tags. I'm like, wow, now the operation is huge now. So amazing stuff, right?
Yeah. It's come a long way. But challenges, I think right now, of course, more money, more problems. That's without a doubt.
So Biggie was right.
Biggie was right. And I guess the challenge we have now is we employ something like almost 100 staff, across Philippines and Australia, with sort of half the workforce here and half the workforce there. One of the challenges is you can grow a business, Phil, and it's very exciting. The first decade has been extremely exciting. We haven't had a slow month. We've had compounding growth every month ever since we started. And I cannot remember, I mean, when we first started, the first time one month beat the previous month, we bought a pizza. 5 years later, the previous year, the current year is bigger than the previous year. We fly to New Zealand. And now in year 10, we're planning, we flew everyone to Vegas a couple of years ago. We flew not just Australia, but also the Philippines to Bali, all 45 of us a year ago. And so it's been exciting, but what I'm starting to feel now is that sense of excitement is still there because the compound is still enormous, but the people after 10 years, they cannot, it would be wrong of me or naive of me to think that everyone is there to do the same amount of volume year in, year out. And all we're doing as an organization is compounding the growth and stacking on more staff to manage the volume. If you're in the organization for 9 years and you've been writing depreciation schedules and you're pushing them out, and year 1 you're pushing 5, and then year 3 you're pushing 10, and year 8 you're pushing 20 reports a week, and you do that because of the scales and the economies of scales that you receive out of the systems that you build, either whether it's IT or whether it's just the simplification of processes that
some sort of automation. Yeah,
correct. And so it gets to a point where, yes, as exciting as it is, for them to be expected to push that type of volume day in, day out is not something that's sustainable. And for me, sustainability was never a thing I used to think about, because when you first start, it's all about survival. And to get to a point where you have to carry on the business in a sustainable manner is very tricky to do, because you're thinking about not just the growth of the business is almost taking care of itself at this point if you're doing it 10 years in a row. But what you've got to realize is that you must do it in a manner that people don't get burnt out and the people are taken care of in the process. And I'm not talking about, and something I'm learning now is that the pizzas that you throw, the lunches that you do, the Balis and the Las Vegas and all of that is nowhere near as important as what you do for each single person in the organization and your thought and care that goes into taking care of their lives. And what does that mean? It's about assessing them as people and going, you know what is important to them? Are we making their lives better? Because every year comes around, we look at the numbers, we go, it takes us 10 people to turn over $1 million. Now, if we want to turn over another $5 million, we have to bring in 50 people. So the question should be, for every extra $1 million that we turn over, we should be setting a criteria or an expectation on ourselves, a new target that says, instead of bringing on 10 people for every million, perhaps we have to try to bring in only 5. So that way the people that come and produce the work are actually not working any harder. In fact, they're working a lot less than they were the previous year. So we're doing it growing in a sustainable manner. I think that's one of the biggest challenges going into the future for the business where we're at the moment. And that's thinking about how people feel, not just about making the numbers and rewarding them for the work that they do, because it's just not enough.
Yeah, I mean, look, you make a really good point. I think there's a couple of things I can take away from that. I think the first challenge is when you get to a business, say your size, with the workforce your size, there's another element of not just managing and growing your business, but now managing people. A whole new beast, right? So you got like 2 in 1 at the moment that you got to deal with.
And you can do a lot of this. I mean, just being very honest with the audiences, there's a lot of things out there, tools that can allow this to happen. Is, of course, you build a strong people team with HR and whatnot, but also then spending more time with people on an individual basis to make sure that you're hearing and listening to what they have to say, in terms of, because everybody's, I guess, personal ambitions and motivations are very unique. And one of the things we're going through with our team is PPF, which is personal, professional, and financial goals, trying to get that aligned with the business goals, not just theirs, but also the businesses. And of course, then you've got your AI technologies that are available now, and it's about exploring them. And, I say to the team this, as I say, it's not so much the point that you execute successfully in a really short amount of time. It's the fact that you are trying to roll out these projects that show your ambition is to improve their quality of life at work. And hopefully that impacts at home too.
Correct.
So if we can show them that by way of just saying, hey, this is something I'm doing today. And the point of this exercise is to try to reduce the amount of reporting that we're required to do. For example, instead of you skimming through photos of documentation and inspection photos, perhaps we can get an AI model to skim through for you and work out the number of bedrooms, the number of walls, windows, doors, etc. If we can just share that piece with people, they automatically feel a sense of care and nurturing. And that's really important for any business. Is to vocalize some of those progresses so they all feel a part of that journey that you're going through, because it's hard work, especially when you're exploring something like AI technologies in an environment where you don't even know which one or who is the right person to talk to. Correct.
I think you make a really good point. The second thing I can take away from that is what you have or what you're doing right now in terms of retention of staff, because staff, they're the most valuable asset to your business. You understand that. And I wish maybe 10, 15 years ago, our bosses, my bosses back then understood that, because my boss at an accounting firm didn't know my name. When it came to promotions and things like that, they were definitely not talking about financial side of things. They just treated us like a number. Enter myself, yourself, and a few others that are running businesses now. You know, I kind of feel like we're a new age boss where we've been on the other side of being treated or not treated like human beings, right? And now we're doing everything in our power to make sure that we are treating our staff members like human beings. And I think, you know, with a workforce of 100 plus people, retention is key, because the last thing you want to do is turn over staff members. The things that you're putting in place, you know, they're different. Like the trips, you know, the pizzas, the dinners, the lunches, whatever, they're all great. But I think ultimately what separates yourself from other businesses is the fact that you're taking the time to listen and to learn from the individual employees. Because at that point in time, that's when the employees will feel, holy shit, I'm part of this. This is something that I can help build. I'm not just a number, which is a very powerful thing, I think, because if someone did that to me, you know, I probably wouldn't have left the firms. I would have stayed.
I worked at an organization before I started this business. I was working in an organization for about 5 odd years, and in that 5 years, I saw people that worked at that organization same time as me or even after me. In construction, golf days, they're big, right? And I remember on the 5th year when I've been sort of real holding it in and thinking, how am I going to deliver this message to my boss and tell him that I'm going to start a tax depreciation business and I'm going to resign. Just didn't know when, how, had the letter ready one day, and my boss comes into my office and he goes, Tuan, I want you to start coming to some golf days with me. And I said, Michael, unfortunately, I was actually going to resign today. And his jaw dropped, and and he goes, "How? Like, you're part of us now." Like, and it's like,
you've gone to the golf days.
5 years, and I think 5 years of someone's life is a long time. And I think that, you're right. Like, you want to do the things that perhaps you would have changed had it been your organization. And I've been through some real travesties and whatnot in my own life, in my own career. I had a really tough upbringing. I was called a lot of different names. Povo Tuan was one of them. Yeah, and right. that also has its psychological issues.
Now you show them, right?
I show them, but I guess not so much. And I haven't let it become my sort of primary reason to sort of get ahead. I've sort of let that sort of sit in the background, and I've crossed that off the list. No longer am I going to suffer when it comes financial pain. So that's one thing. But of course, I've got myself out of that. Sometimes you don't want to get stuck in those ruts of I'm fixated on making the infinite amount of money, so no one can ever call me that again. It's a very dangerous road to go on, and I guess some people can get affected by that. But it's something you've got to sort of just be mindful.
It will never end.
Correct. Yeah, it will never end. And of course the upbringing of the parents as well, like mum and dad. I think I was just sitting with someone the other day, and actually it was someone I interviewed, and I remember they said to me, like they're willing to work hard and whatever else I go through the interview, and they said, mum and dad, their parents came over here with like nothing to their name, and I was like, that's a brilliant story. Like, tell me more. And he was like, and this, and I was like, how did you get here to Australia? I was like, they were like, we flew here from South America or something like that. Yeah. I was like, that's different, because I can't relate to that, because my mum and dad, my dad was a boat builder. He worked in a shed, and he saved up enough through earnings to build his own boat and flee Vietnam 9 times before he, was successful. So I think there's a lot of that background story you know, that, and of course, mum and dad are still with me today, thank God, and can share a lot of that. And it resonates with me because I'm like, man, if people talk about entrepreneur, I think that is entrepreneurial. You take a little dinghy and you leave a country and battle the seas.
You can never take, right?
Yeah, that is ultimate level of entrepreneurial efforts. And I think what I do today is barely anything.
There's no pressure. There's nothing.
You cannot compare the two. So that's my take on what it takes to, you know, sort of start a business. I think if people are sort of on the fence, like, you got to think about what other people go through, whether it's your parents or your grandfather or your grandmother, and what they went through was treacherous versus conditions today. And to start a business is what you might be forsaking some income for a short amount of time.
That's right.
To change your life.
No, good point. I mean, look, I think, you know, our parents have paved the way for us to do something special, right? They've given us the opportunity. And, you know, for anyone on the fence thinking about it, if your parents are in the same boat, no pun intended, jump in and take it by both hands. What's the worst that can happen? Because I always tell my audience, like, if you've been thinking about it, do it. And if you fail, well, just go back to your 6-figure paying job. Like,
that's right.
That's the worst that can happen. You don't have to go back to Vietnam, to the Viet Cong, right? Like your parents may have, but you're just going back to a 6-figure paying job. That's pretty good for most people. So definitely take the leap of faith, those that are listening that haven't yet. Now, thanks for sharing all that. I guess if through your decade of business experience, if you had to pick one, which tip would you share with the audience in terms of either starting or growing their business? What would you share?
Not that everybody wants to be in my position. Yeah. Like where I am, I think, I mean, I'm very grateful for where I am in terms of position of being a managing director of an organization with lots of staff, good sense of control, great growth, consistent growth, manageable growth, sustainable growth.
Yeah.
One thing that I believe that is really important, if your goal is to build a bigger business, is that you've got to understand the idea of letting go. I think I wouldn't be here today if I wasn't able to let go. When I first started, and I'm sure everyone out there listening, thinking about starting a business, you're thinking, I'm very good at what I do. I felt the same. I feel that I'm very good at what I do when I was sitting there creating manual invoices. Yeah. Right? I talk to a person, they become a customer, I'm going to send them an invoice. I'll write the invoice in a beautiful way. I'm going to go do the inspection to the best of my ability. I'll be unmatched. I'll deliver the best report ever with the greatest deduction ever. Not miss anything, not miss the tabletop, not miss the furniture, none of that, right? Everything's crossed off. Not miss a square meter of carpet when I'm measuring these properties. And you can feel that sense of control when you start because you don't want anything to go wrong. All that quality, right? And that's inherent in a technical person, a person of technical ability like yourself, Phil, who's an accountant, or myself as a quantity surveyor, measuring and estimating costs and working out what it costs to build something. You've done that your whole life. And so then you get into this position where you're the technical advisor in your business, right? But you're also wearing the hat of everything. The sooner you can let go of as much as you can, the more time you then spend on building a great business. And if you're into building great businesses, trust me, whatever you think you're good at, there's always someone who's going to do it better than you. Every single time I've proven that to myself. So that's my biggest lesson to myself. Took me a long time to learn that, to be honest. I was out there calling every sales, every customer I talked to, every referral partner or accountant or mortgage broker I called. I did all the networking. I wrote all the reports. And then bringing on my first offshore assistant was very confrontational to me. Like, it was, how can this person ever? 50 offshore staff later, they do things a lot better than I can ever do. In fact, they can do a lot of things better than any Australian could ever do. Which is crazy. It's because that sense of care, that the way that the culture of the country and the people there are, they just have this appreciation for what they do. And it's no slack on people here. I just believe that people locally, they're not designed to, no longer are we sort of, we're accustomed to the fact that pushing data is just not what we do best.
Yeah, correct.
We're more adept at doing more valuable things like customer service or
relationships,
building relationships, building rapport with people face to face, going out there to the networking events. That's where we add the most value. And that's just the way the world's going. So the faster we can let go of things to either offshore it or get agencies to take care of it so we can do the good work that we do, and which is, for me right now in my role, I'll be honest with you, I do nothing very well, but what I do very well now is think about where the business goes and how the people,
getting the right people,
are connected with that purpose.
Yeah, amazing stuff. I think, to your point about letting go, I think if you are a business owner that does all, wears all the hats, right? I think what you'll find, there is a transition period of when you do let go, there is that transition period of there's going to be teething issues. There's going to be some errors that are going to be made. Things aren't going to be done to the standard that you like it to be done, but that is just a transition period. Once you figure that out, then, the business actually can grow.
I agree. And you know what, that bit there, that's great you mentioned that, Phil, the transition period. The best way to overcome some of the challenges through that period is when you're doing the work and you're creating the processes, systems and manuals to do that work, is that you document it. And if you use the example of creating an invoice, for us, it's like put the client's name at the top, put the price in there, put the bank details below, send the invoice off. But there's so many things that, if you wanted to create the perfect invoice, you would write things like, perhaps document this step by step, is ensure margins are set here. Do you know what I mean? Font size at the top would be this. Logo is in this size, placed on the top right. The business address is always placed in this position. Having that level of detail for anything that you do and you want someone else to do it really well is to document it to that level. So that way, when you pass it on, it's without fail and it's to the exact specification that you wish for from the get-go. And it doesn't sound like much, but the more of that you document, the better the transition, the process is going to be, and easier it is for the next person to grasp. Yeah,
100%. Any organization growing to a big size, you need standard operating procedures in place.
Yep.
Having those SOPs just allows you to scale a lot quicker. And I'm glad that you shared that with us. You've got this business, and as you were saying, more money, more problems on the business side. But I feel like the business your size now, you've achieved personal financial freedom. Have you? And if not, why not? Or have you hit any other of the freedoms? The time, flexibility?
Look, I have my days of stresses for sure. Financially free, yes, I would say that I'm much more fortunate than where I came from. And if I look around, then for sure, I live a very different lifestyle to where I was, but to a lot of people.
You've worked hard for it, so that's not fortunate. It's hard work.
But I think there's some of the things I always wanted to tick off. Like I said to you, my objective was always to have a nice home, which I do, a nice car, which I have.
Yeah.
And so going into that, I think I have those, but do I stress less? I could say that with the abilities and where the business has gone and where I've taken it, it's allowed me to choose where I wish to stress.
Right.
I stress out about things and care a lot. I'm one to care a lot about what people think, and in particular, people that work for me, the people that drive the business. And so, people, without the people, there is no business. And so my goal is always to keep and optimize the people within, making sure that they're always striving for better for themselves and also for the organization. And so making those alignments with personal, professional, financial goals is always kept in alignment to make sure that the business is flowing as fast as the staff are and the people are. So of course, the stress is without a doubt. That's only because we choose to. It's funnily enough, if I choose to take a holiday, which I did about a month ago, and I flew to Japan sort of the day before I booked the flights and flew.
Last minute just went, let's go.
Last minute went to go with mum and dad to Japan and spend some time with my family. And when I was there, all the problems went away. So I think that is a great thing to have.
Amazing.
I think and coming back, the business was still intact. In fact, I think we had our biggest day of sales ever. We had within that 2 or 3 weeks I was away, and that's a testament to the team and the energy we've all put in to allow that. But as soon as I come back, I've just decided to pick up all the problems that I wished
to stress back in,
back in, and go back in there and pick up some of those projects which are really challenging, and just go again. And of course, it's all for the better. And you sort of, I think end of the day, I'm not sure sometimes. I wonder, am I doing it just to keep busy, or am I doing it because I've got nothing, nothing better to do. And all these questions come to play. But look, importantly is as long as you're passionate about it, which I still feel heavily that way about.
That's good. So it's really not work for you. It's just something that you enjoy doing now, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Now I know you've got a little one as well, a daughter.
Yeah.
How's that now balancing family life and work? Do you find it's pretty easy now that you've got an established business? Or do you still find that it's a bit hard to switch off between business
bit of
and
advice.
Family?
That's a different bit of advice, Phil. Family. Okay, well, I was single when I first started the business, and I think I was probably 5 years into the business before I met my wife, and so it was it's. For me, I think, I don't know, because I've never been in the shoes of having a family and starting a business. I can only see that as very daunting. Yeah. That's a lot of pressure because now I've got a family of myself, and I think, how would I juggle that? But I think I'm fortunate in the regard that the business has been in a very good place when I started to have a family about 3 years ago, and so that's always been managed by way of I guess the business being the right place, but also having the right partner that understands the pressures of being a managing director or a CEO or building in a business, full stop. So I think that support role is really critical. But I think it's been good. It's been tricky some days, but I think for the most part, I think couldn't complain really.
What do you think's easier, Tuan? Just to wrap up, being a dad or being a business owner?
Without a doubt, I think being a dad has its own challenges, and I must say, no such thing as a dad who's an expert out there.
That's right.
Especially a first-time dad like myself, Phil, and now.
It's crazy.
And so hopefully I'm better next time round.
Yeah, nice. Tuan, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you jumping on the pod and sharing your experience and knowledge. Hopefully someone out there has listened to this and they can take that piece of advice or the advice that you've shared today and apply it to their business journey.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you for having us, Phil.